This is Baseline, a podcast about baseball by people who know nothing about baseball. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Andrew.
Well, I think there's been the conceit that indeed you know a bit about baseball. Tune into episode 1 to find out more about that. But here we are in episode 2, and we do know a tiny bit about baseball.
Right.
It's totally fine, though, for you as the listener to know absolutely nothing about baseball.
It is unacceptable, though, if you know a lot about baseball. You need to turn the podcast off right now. And no, I'm kidding.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, what I don't want is to have someone mansplain me baseball. So as long as we don't do that, I think that we'll be in good shape going forward. But Andrew, I've got some follow-up, which I guess we'll put here at the top of the show. Last time we had talked about baseball movies. I still haven't come up with a name for that segment yet, but I'm marinating on it, you know.
Yeah, we got to think of a good pun.
Yeah.
You know, one is out there in the world just waiting for us to discover it, and we will find it.
There's just so many words. I mean, typically when I'm like searching
that
for
is true.
a good...
There are a lot of words.
Kyle, baseline. There's lots of words, yeah. So looking at lists of words with relation to baseball was fruitless, I guess, in the last week or so. But eventually we will find a name for this. If you do have a name suggestion, I'm open to it. That's fine. movies@baseline.show. Send it in. We'll take your suggestions there. But I've got follow-up. I said I would set up a list on Letterboxd, which is like a social movie watching check-in platform.
Right. You basically can track what movies you watched and then like rate them and such.
Which is pretty cool. You can write reviews and whatnot. But what you can also do is create public lists. So what I've done is created a public list on Letterboxd of the movies that I thought maybe we could watch for this show. There are a couple on there that maybe basketball is one, which is kind of baseball adjacent. But there are ones that are so formative to my childhood when it came to my overall fandom of baseball. Rookie of the Year just floated. There's so many quotes and like visual things about the way that my childhood works and the way that I perceive my childhood that is like all about the VHS versions of these movies. So I am thoroughly appreciative that the setup on Letterboxd is of like the movie posters, which are so reminiscent of the VHS sort of covers or the DVD covers, I guess, if you want to go back that far. Either way, you should go check it out, though. It'll be in the show notes. And if you've got
we're going to watch them all by next week, so fire up your Apple TV.
It is. That's the thing, though. Like, I want to get into this a little bit with you. Watching things and watching baseball can be really expensive. And watching these baseball movies is likely going to be just as expensive.
Renting movies, even very old movies, is not cheap.
Well, sometimes they're available. Like previous to us starting the recording of this show, I told you about a story where over the weekend I was in a hotel room and watching like the Cinemax or the HBO stations flip by, and there were a number of the movies actually that I have already added.
You were up
to
in
list.
Like the 900s of the channel or whatever.
Pretty much, yeah. It's when you're in a hotel in Vegas. That's kind of the that's the not safe zone. But they had baseball movies, if you know what I mean. So which was fine. So here I am creating this list on Letterboxd for baseball movies I'm finding, and I just it hit me like there are so many movies out there that there's probably no way I'm going to remember them all. And so I guess I'm relying on you folks to send me in your recommendations for your formative baseball movies, or just you know what, give me the movie that made you say like, baseball's not for me. Like maybe that's the one we should watch.
Yeah, maybe you watched a movie about baseball that was terribly boring, and you were like, never again.
Or one that scared you, like The Sandlot. Just that big old mad dog, just so angry and yeah.
Yeah.
It can get expensive, and we're gonna have to figure something out about how to manage that. Because I'm not gonna go to Sweden every time I want to watch a baseball movie, nor am I going to start like a full-blown CBS interactive subscription every month or a Hulu subscription just to watch one of these titles. I would go so far as to probably, it'll happen one way or the other. Well, maybe we'll take donations. Maybe we can take like a like instead of a Patreon, you can just donate us a movie, donate us your old DVDs or VHSs. I'd be all for that. The thing that I think is going to cost us the most before we get into today's actual topic is watching baseball on TV. Now, I'm wondering, and I don't know if this is true yet, but I'm wondering if this would be a breach of terms of service, which is not a great way to preface this whole thing. But MLB at Bat is the way that you can watch any team.
It's their platform.
It is indeed their platform. You can watch any team in market as long as they're not, I guess, in your area or playing someone that is in your area.
Right.
You can watch some games.
They get blacked out.
You do get blacked out quite a bit. Or you can watch, a team that's not from your home market, which is typically what it's used for. So for me, being down in LA, watching the San Francisco Giants is mainly my thing. And I'm spoiler alert, that's my team. But I'm wondering if we would be able to sort of share an account between you and me and watch two different games at the same time. Because if we split
it... do they allow simultaneous viewing? That's a good question.
Of two different teams. And I am pretty curious to find out. I think it would be worth our time and effort to find out if it works that way. Because if both of us are in the market for that this season, that seems like a much better way to do it. But I think it is also very dependent on where your team is based. I'm putting in big quotations, your team, because your ownership stake over the insert the name of the team that Andrew chooses here is pretty large, right? You have a stake in whatever team that is.
Right. I am on the board or whatever.
On the field, you're in the batter's box.
The baseball court.
Yes, that's right. Kangaroo court, actually.
I think they call it the pitch.
We'll find out, I guess, if that's... I mean, we're going to have to wait until...
Well, no spoilers, but my team is not geographically close to my current home location.
Okay, so that is a wonderful consideration for this maybe potentially working in our to our advantage. I'm intrigued. This is very good. Let's get into it then. Let's just straight away hit me with your team, because I'm wondering how did you come to this decision? Have you made the decision? Where are we in this search?
That's a good question. Well, I've been doing auditions on the weekends. So my team is the Cincinnati Reds, and that's because I grew up in Cincinnati. And
which I guess if you hadn't grokked from the last episode, I don't know, maybe you didn't listen, but it did. I guess we did kind of spoil it quite a bit.
We might
last episode.
Yeah, I'm making it official now. I am saying that they are my team.
Now, did you feel pressure to choose a team, or is this something that you had in the back of your mind for a long time? Where'd this come from?
So I believe that unless your parents raise you to root for another team, like from birth, then you should root for the team of your hometown. And this
was
a
general rule.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think of an example. This is football related, but still. So I had a friend in high school. We both grew up in Cincinnati, and one day he decided that he was now an Atlanta Falcons fan. And I said, that's not how that works. Like, you can't just switch your allegiance like that. Like, I mean, I went to Ohio State. I can't just decide that suddenly I'm a Michigan State fan. Like, that's not how that works.
Okay. Yep.
That's my opinion, I guess. That I'm staking my flag in the ground on this one.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that being a good premise for something. I think the question becomes then, like, let's say you moved around a lot, right? Or you grew up in a market that did not have a team. You grew up in a market where a team was then transplanted there. Maybe like a good example is Colorado, right? Like the Colorado Rockies show up mid-90s.
Or Baltimore.
And you're like, wait a second. Like, this is not, I guess, like my family for 30 years has been, whatever, Texas, Houston Astro fans. And now there's a team local. Do I like split allegiances? Does my family now pivot just because we live in an area? Or do I need to spend, I don't know, a majority of time, take it 5 years out of the 3 years my family has kept moving around? That 5 years can equal wherever the major market team is, and would be the team that I root for. I don't know. There is a lot to like unpack, kind of just shove into like who your team is going to be. For me, I grew up in a market that had two teams, and
that's interesting. So you had a decision, I guess, or you could pick. You could pick amongst them, right?
You could, yeah, and I think the thing is, this can also be rooted in very deeply seated class issues and also like race issues, I would say.
I think that's true, right? Because some people have, between like the New York teams, both baseball and football, there's one that's seen as kind of working class versus, middle or upper class.
The Yankees and the Mets. Yeah. No, 100%. And that's the way it was in the San Francisco Bay Area between the Giants and the A's. And it still is. I mean, you get the premium seats in the premium stadium with your San Francisco Giants, and you get the Oakland Coliseum with your A's. And
I just want to put it out here. This is perhaps the sort of a segment of Andrew's random opinions. Oakland Athletics is not a very good team name. It seems kind of tautological to me. They might as well call themselves like the Oakland Ball Team.
Yes, understood. I understand that. I think what happened was they came from Philadelphia, and there's probably
so it's Philadelphia's fault.
Yes, everything is Philadelphia's fault.
This is true,
but it probably came from that area where the name has some sort of meaning. Hopefully, in that area, and then once the Pacific Coast League got drummed up, and then that team moved over to Oakland. They took that team name with them, because in the Pacific Coast League there were teams like in Oakland and in San Francisco that had different names, and they were more about that area. It's Giants don't really mean anything in San Francisco. Athletics don't mean anything in Oakland. They were just team names that were applied to the franchises as they moved out west. That whole time, though, I think is what solidified which groups in the Bay Area would root for which teams. And I assume that also happened for my family, in that they came from like sort of the Sunnyvale / Sacramento / just kind of like moving around different pockets of Northern California. And based on the radio signal that was available in those areas, that's what you get. Like I mentioned in episode 1, KMBR 68 was the station that you would listen to for the San Francisco Giants. And I believe KSFO was also one, but it was like the strongest signaled AM station in the area. You could get it 200 miles away. You can get it all the way in Hawaii these days. And that is how wide reaching that team has become. And you can't get the Oakland A's signal out in Hawaii. So there is definitely like both a physical, I guess, if you want to call the transmission of radio waves physical, reason for it, and also like that whole class structure thing, which I think is a lot more deeply seated and is not a question that I'm equipped to answer, but is for sure a kind of a weird outlier when you're trying to decide like which team in a major market that has two, which one you're going to go for.
Right. But it's interesting that you bring up the radio thing because you know what else you can get in Hawaii is 700 WLW, which is the big station in Cincinnati. It's
really
one of the most powerful AM radio stations in the United States. They broadcast at the maximum power.
So I should have been a Reds fan, is what you're saying.
Well, probably, yeah. But, you know, growing up in Cincinnati, my parents listened to talk radio, so we would listen to WLW, and quite frequently, you know, in the afternoons, there would be a baseball game on. And so I would hear the Reds games on the radio. And that's mostly how I came to know the Reds. We didn't watch them on TV very much. More just caught bits and pieces of the game as we were driving around. And that's just how I sort of became acquainted with the Reds. And then, you know, growing up in Cincinnati too, doing things like field trips to the stadium to watch games or things like that. I'm not sure exactly how many baseball games I've been to at the current and previous stadiums, but it's at least a handful. And that's, yeah. So, you know, I guess the Reds have always kind of been my team. And even when I moved away, so I currently live in Southeast Michigan, so it might seem like I should root for the Tigers. That would be, I guess, easier in terms of geographic proximity than that I can go and watch a game in person, but it's just wasn't ever really something I considered because it's just, you know, they're not my hometown team, I guess. And I don't really feel a need to adopt a different team than the one I grew up with, you know. I guess it might be tempting to adopt, you know, a team that's really good and say, oh, I'm going to root for them now. But I feel that that's just kind of dishonest. So, you know, I'll stick with the Reds, even though they're not very good.
Well, and that is the case in baseball all the time. I think this is less the case in other sports like basketball and football, where you have these dynasties that have lasted almost 20 years. Baseball, every season is an up and down. And it may not have seemed that way for teams like the San Francisco Giants, who won 3 in 5 years, and won 3 World Series titles, I guess, trophies, whatever you want to call it, in 5 years. Or Yankees back in the early 2000s, where the Yankees were the team to beat.
You know, the one that I remember viscerally is the Cardinals.
Okay,
were good
over
a while. Yeah, like they had Mark McGwire. That was, I guess, for some reason that particular period of baseball is perhaps the most recent time that I like paid much attention to it and can remember it.
During the whole home run escapades, where folks were chasing records and things like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It became part of the cultural zeitgeist. It was just a part of everyday culture. The Big Mac, right? You eat McDonald's, and so you like baseball. Like it was very much a part of regular culture. But
yeah.
So what I'm wondering, with regards to, especially you being in Michigan now, do you have any sort of desire to be a part of the other team, right? Like going to a game, let's say at Tiger Stadium, and being on the other side, being able to root for not the home team. Does that have anything to do with you kind of like solidifying a pick for, if you would, for the Reds?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it that much. I guess I don't know how comfortable I would feel going to like Tiger Stadium in Reds gear or whatever. Because I don't know what the atmosphere of the stadium is or whatever.
Or what their long-standing beef is.
Right. So,
I was just curious, mostly because taking the contrarian views sometimes for a team that you've heard a lot of. Tigers maybe not so, but like with your mention of like the Cardinals or a team like that, where
right,
like,
or the Yankees, and
or exactly like, no, I'm going to be a Mets fan because I'm blown out on the Yankees. I don't need that anymore.
Right. Or like a Red Sox fan just because of rivalry.
Sure. Yes. And I sometimes that can fuel folks or trying to buck against, like the Golden State Warriors are probably a modern example in basketball where they became the ultimate bandwagon team. They could not lose. They were completely unbeatable. This is obviously a basketball reference on a baseball podcast, but the point being, like you're trying to you're trying to just be contrarian for the fact of being contrarian, and it doesn't always work out how you want it to long term, because that type of pick does not always bring out joy when you're watching games, or you may not like the overall culture of the way that the game is described from that particular whatever, the television broadcast or the radio broadcast or whatever. So we talked briefly about last episode about your knowledge, I guess, of like Reds radio and those guys over there. Is there anything about other parts of the Reds culture, if you would, that continues to like pull you into their fan base or being a fan of that team? Things like on TV or their branding or like any other part of sort of the team's aesthetic, if you would.
I guess I'm not super connected with the team at this point.
So you feel a little disconnected from maybe where they are modern
right
now.
Yeah, I'm a
days?
little, I feel a little behind, I guess. The last time that I
okay
was adjacent to them was almost a decade ago. So I'm sure things have moved along.
Do you think you would bounce off really hard if you listened to a game on the radio today and things were not exactly as you remember them?
No, I think I would be surprised by how similar they probably are.
Even if there were, many, many, many differences.
Right. Well, the names are obviously going to be all different, but they always seemed different whenever I tuned in. So
I guess what I'm asking is more like, for me, tuning into a new radio station, and MLB.TV or MLB at Bat is a good example of this, where I can bounce between different games all the time. Who are they playing? I'll listen to the Reds broadcast, or I'll listen to the Marlins broadcast, or whatever, and I'll tune in. And the way that they come back from a commercial break is different on every single station you listen to. The way that I think it should be done, because this is how the San Francisco Giants have done it for the last 45 years or whatever, is you end the commercial and the crowd fades back up, and that's it. There's no music, there's no rejoin bumper, there's no stinger, there's nothing. You hear a little bit of the crowd noise, and then the commentator comes in.
I think that's how the Reds typically did it too, to my memory.
So you flip over to the Yankees broadcast, and it's like the latest dubstep track coming off. Yeah, the latest track from like a top 40 hit coming back from a commercial break, and the baseball commentator talking over the top of it like they're a radio DJ, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
It has this vibe to it that is just so disconnected from my understanding of the way that baseball should sound that I bounce so hard off it. I'm like, forget the Yankees, forget like all of these other radio broadcasts. I need my Giants back. Like I need that like clean sound. And I feel so bad about it, but I would be really fearful that something, let's say I hadn't chosen a team yet. The one that I have in my mind not being the same as I remember it would just it'd drive me nuts.
Yeah, and I guess that is a consideration I have to make because, when I listened, it was Marty Brennaman and Joe Nuxall, and Joe Nuxall's not around anymore, and Marty Brennaman has announced that he's retiring soon, so that play-by-play announcer team is not around anymore. Things are moving on, so that probably would be different, because I can think of, not just transitioning out of commercial, but transitioning to a commercial. I can think of how Marty Brenneman did that it was just kind of a fluid, smooth. He would go from calling the game to just saying, and now we're going to pause for station identification and these messages, and then right into the commercials.
Right.
And that was, it was just, it was so tight.
So much of that becomes muscle memory. Right. And baseball, I think, when you're playing it, is also all about muscle memory. The reason why folks have a particular windup, they stand in the batter's box a certain way, they do a thing after they throw a pitch, they tap their shoe, like all of baseball is this muscle memory. Mm-hmm. And
it's a kind of a ritual.
It is a ritual, and I think the experience that we have with it as viewers and fans and listeners and whatnot also revolves around ritual. It happens typically at the same time of day all the time. You go to the same place to watch it or listen to it. You expect, at a certain level, things to be consistent from one game to another, or at least one season to another, or one team to another. And when those things are not consistent, it does kind of make you uneasy. But I guess long term, you do eventually adapt. And likely for me, it's been a little while actually since I've been a part of like a regular watching ritual or watching cadence of the San Francisco Giants games. And so I'm kind of interested to get back into it. I'm thoroughly worrisome that JT Snow is back, former first baseman for your San Francisco Giants, late 90s, early aughts. He's he's fine as a color commentator, but get him out of the radio booth. That voice, I just can't with it. But I'm worrisome that ye oldie crew that I'm used to is gone, right? And not gone, but like on their way out, and it's not going to be what I remember. And so there's going to be this adjustment period where I'm trying to get used to it and trying to, I don't know, find something to like latch onto and find something that makes me feel like, okay, coming back to it. He said this thing like he said before, or his home run call or whatever, something to kind of anchor myself on and come back to, and something that I enjoy long term, but we'll see. This is I'm wondering where do we go from here, right? I don't want you to like go out and grab an all-weather jersey and a hat and stuff to make it so that you're like, no, I'm a number one. I got the foam finger and I got the pennant and I have everything else, but do you sort of have a plan as to like how you want to start following the Reds? Do you want to learn players' names? I know we kind of touched briefly on that last episode. Do you want to, I don't know, learn the coaching staff first? Do you want to know who the players are now and see who they're going through during spring training? Do you want to wait and not go through spring training yet? Because, folks are going to be in flux. You have a plan?
I don't really have a plan in mind. I thought probably, our timing for starting this podcast does sort of coincide with shortly before spring training. So it makes sense to kind of pick things up there. And in the same sense that spring training is training for the players, it might also be training for me, and that I can kind of get up to speed. And
that's fair.
Learn who's who. I think I care mostly about the players. I'm not sure I really give that much of a crap about who the coaching staff is, but I don't know. Maybe I'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. I think a good place to start is taking a look, let's say, at the schedule, the upcoming schedule, and trying to find like the first time that you'll be able to sit down and, I don't know, like dedicate a little bit of time to absorbing a game. The problem with spring training, though, is that not all the games are televised. I mean, very rarely are any of the games televised, but also they're usually not on the radio. And so for most of this, I have a feeling you'll probably have to go to whatever the Cincinnati Reds website is, listen to it there, either at a computer or through the MLB at Pat app. Let's see. So starting out on Saturday, the 23rd of February, that seems to be the first spring training game. That'll be against the Cleveland Indians.
I see.
12:05 start. And then most of spring training also ends up being sort of middle of the day for you. So you're looking at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6. I mean, there are quite a lot of spring training games. It goes all the way to the 28th. The 28th is going to be the first game that they kick off with the Pirates for regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So all
this
those
is perfect
games,
too, because this is the 150th anniversary of the Reds this season.
Yeah, that's some history. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to take.
A long time.
It is a long time, but also I don't think it's that important for you to get hung up on the history of the Reds organization necessarily. There is definitely a lot.
I know more about that than you probably realize.
Well, and you probably know way more about that than I ever would. So right. I think there is a bit of local flavor I think that we're going to have to get over with regards to describing baseball or describing our teams or describing what we are experiencing in both of our regions of the country watching this. Mm-hmm. And I think also like the news, right? Like generalized MLB news, when you're trying to absorb that from anywhere or being a follower of a team, like I don't care what such and such pitcher designated for assignment, 3 hours ago on MLB Trade Rumors like that.
Right. So this is interesting. So, one of the things I did shortly before we started the podcast is I went and found 2 blogs about the Reds, and I added them to my RSS reader, and I took them out because it's not useful. It's a bunch of information about trades and stuff, and like I don't know what it all means.
Yeah, so like
it requires so much prior knowledge from me that I just don't have right now.
Yes. Well, and I think there are certain things in the news you can probably keep an eye out for and probably archive the rest. Keep an eye out on starting rotations and starting lineups, right? Coming up after spring training and seeing like, okay, it looks like this person got the left fielder spot. It looks like this person got the second rotation spot. Usually, they will also do things like announce the starter for opening day somewhere near the middle of the spring training season or schedule. So there are nuggets of news that are probably useful for deciding whether or not you're going to watch opening day. You're going to watch the second one. You're going to whatever you want to do with your time, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to make better decisions in terms of the entertainment of baseball and saying like, okay, this is a night game, easy to like go home after work, grab a beer, sit down, watch this game. That you can do. Showing up on a Tuesday where they're playing a 105 start against the Marlins, you will not probably tune into that one. And that one you'll just catch up later and read the scores or whatever.
Right. I think that is kind of a benefit of choosing to be a baseball fan versus something else. Is there are so many games that it is impossible to watch them all, so I don't have to feel bad about missing some. Whereas I might with like football or something,
Yeah. You're not dedicating a day to this, which is kind of the nice part. There are also, I mean, you can do like the top 10 plays sort of thing, ESPN style, like just show me the good stuff that happens.
Sports Center.
Yeah. You can do that. I mean, and that is usually a fine way to experience a baseball game, but you lose a lot of the intricacies and the decision making and the strategy involved, and so you won't necessarily learn a lot about the game during those times, but you will sort of get the context of the Red season in general. Some of the stuff though about like top stories, you were mentioning things about like trades and whatnot. This is a time of the season called the Hot Stove League, where some players are playing. They were playing in the Arizona Fall League, which is a continuation. It happens like the week after regular baseball ends. There is the Arizona Fall League, and players just keep playing baseball. They just don't stop. And during that time, there will be some trades. There's going to be, rumors of trades, things like that. One of the biggest moves I would say that you should pay attention to is that the Dodgers' own Yasiel Puig is now probably the starting right fielder for your Cincinnati Reds, who is probably going to be a name you hear a lot. He's got a lot.
I do recognize the name. Just because I've heard it before,
Lots. Well, and they were in the World Series, right? Recently, the Los Angeles Dodgers. So, an intriguing player, to say the least. Defensively, pretty great. He hits incredibly well. He likes to lick his bat. It's a whole thing. So, just keep an eye out for some interesting stories. Maybe I don't know about. Man, I'm so reluctant to say like resubscribe to those RSS feeds because I know you probably just got inundated with 10 recent stories of like Reds officially signed this person and Reds signed this pitcher. MLB commissioner. Yeah, it's a lot. Google top stories. I'm just kind of scrolling through them now. It's an okay view at that. But you're not gonna want like show me the MLB prospects for the Cincinnati Reds right now. Show me the farm league. Show me those types of things. I think get way too deep in the weeds of who's going to show up in 4 years or who's going to get traded for the top prospects and just not be a name that you see ever again. That's the kind of stuff that you don't need to pay attention to right now. So in terms of like top stories. I don't know. Maybe search when you want to search, but don't like always keep an eye out on it, I guess. It would be my recommendation. You could also, I guess, give them a follow on Twitter. I know you're not really on Twitter that much anymore, but @Reds is their Twitter handle. You could, I guess, I don't know. The social media for baseball is a whole other thing that I probably followed early days of the San Francisco Giants. I just can't anymore. It's like you're giving me the birthday of someone who made the final out in the 1990 World Series. That's not information I care about.
Right.
As a casual fan, like I'm probably not going to care much about that. But as you like continue to watch for years and years and years, you quote unquote pass it on to any offspring that you might have. Like that's the kind of stuff where you're like, oh yeah, no, I remember this player. Let's see. No Twitter. All right, so I'm gonna put Twitter in the garbage. Let's see. What else about your team? Are you going to go see any games? Are you kind of planning on any like, okay, you want to get out to at least one game this season to see your team since you're not really in the area? Is that something you have interest in?
I've thought about it. I haven't made any concrete plans, but it's something that I would be up for. I'd have to look at the schedule and see if they, will be playing up here at some point, or rather when that is. Or try and see if there's, a time when I'm going to be back, in Cincinnati that maybe I could go see a game or something. Mm-hmm. I would like to go see a baseball game again, because it's fun and interesting. So,
yeah. I would love to get out to spring training and maybe see a game. They're a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I'd like to go to Arizona, but it's
yeah. The thing is, though, with like trying to decide what game to go watch in person, there's so much to consider, and maybe that needs to be its own episode where like trying to decide where to sit to maximize both your enjoyment of it, not getting just doused in peanuts and beer is also ideal.
And not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, not spending a whole boatload of money, but also being able to see the game. Like,
Right.
there's a lot about choosing a seat, I think, that is important, and also the food, right? You want good food. You want to be able to step up wherever or down or wherever you are, and go grab like a dog and a beer. I think I have a milestone for us. Just briefly searching through the Cincinnati Reds schedule here for spring training. My San Francisco Giants are playing your Cincinnati Reds the 26th of February at 12:05 p.m. That's yeah. So it's gonna be middle of the day, I guess, on a Tuesday, which isn't great, but I think this might be like the first game where maybe if there's a radio call for it, like we could come back to this game in particular and listen back to your team playing my team, and sort of like dissect how that went, and what of these.
I might actually be able to listen to that because that is in the late afternoon for me. So
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And you work from home, so it's whatever.
Actually, the funny part is that week, we have to talk about this offline, but that week I'm going to be traveling for work and likely will be in your time zone.
What?
Yeah. So that'll be a late game for me too. But
it's all coming together. It's all coming together. I'm tenting my fingers like an evil villain.
What I did last season, though, was in preparation for an idea I had sort of offhandedly. I recorded an entire spring training game from the San Francisco Giants on sfgiants.com, and would every month or so just go back and re-listen to that game that I had recorded. Through, I forget what app it was. It was probably some mixture of Audio Hijack and some other program. But I was able to have it pull up the schedule and automatically start recording from a URL at a particular time, record for 3 hours. It didn't finish the whole game because baseball takes forever. But I was able to go back and listen to some of the parts of the game and use it almost like a DVR. That then got uploaded to an RSS feed in a Dropbox folder and with some magic, and then I slurped it up into what at the time was Pocket Casts, so I could do Smart Speed on it. I hacked a baseball game to make it sound like a podcast, and it ruined the experience for me. At least in the podcast player, it was fine when I was listening on the computer a few times, but in a podcast player and through an RSS feed, oh my gosh, it was not what I expected. Smart Speed with a home run call is dumb, and it's gone. A home run, like just that you just slap the words like right next to each other,
right? And
there's no gravitas at all with them. So
it takes all the dramatic tension out of it.
Yes, it definitely does. So I don't recommend that for this year, at least. But I do think that this is maybe a good milestone for us to come back to. Maybe I will find a way to record this and like experience it later because I don't know if I'll be able to experience it live. But Tuesday, the 26th at 12:05 p.m. Pacific, which is my time zone at the moment. We'll come back to that one. See how it went. Maybe we can just like look at some stats too. If for some reason both of us can't catch that game, we can just kind of, I don't know, roll it back and look at the stats. But was there anything else that maybe you wanted to talk about with regards to choosing your team or next steps on becoming more of a Reds fan?
Not anything that I can think of offhand.
I think I'm really excited for you to go deep on one team. I do recommend that it go this way. I would not have said like, hey, just be an MLB fan.
I think it's a lot easier than like trying to sample a bunch of different teams or whatever.
Well, or just choosing one and sticking with it.
Right.
I think is fine to do for a season. Maybe you can change it up next year if this doesn't work out. But the fact that you actually had a reason for, why you wanted to go this way and a reason for saying like, hey, this is my hometown, my home team.
Right. I don't know if it's a thoughtful reason, but it's a reason.
And that's all you need. You don't really need any other reason. I mean, folks have decided on teams for.
Yeah. I think if you asked anybody why they like a particular team, they would probably be like, I grew up with them. There might be a handful of people who are like, oh, I put everyone's stats into a spreadsheet and picked the one,
that for the last 15 and a half years was the top. And so, that's
assigned each of them a probability of success.
I don't want to have to spreadsheet a team to figure it out. I think it's just feel it, feel it. And if you're, I guess, listener trying to figure out what team you should choose, I don't know. I feel like this is almost a roulette situation. Like you could probably create a BuzzFeed quiz for this where
which
you're
baseball team are you?
That's a thing, right? Quick Google search. Well, okay. So let's see. Let's, I guess, wrap up this episode by saying, I wish you the best. I don't know what the MLB projections are for your particular team. I know for mine, they're not great.
I guess they're not great for mine either.
Yeah, I think we probably have some winning sauce, if you would, for the San Francisco Giants, and then you guys have a few acquisitions you've made over the off season in the hot stove league. That stove is now lukewarm, I suppose, but
it's cooling off.
It's cooling off. It's the spring. You're coming up. It'll be fine. But we'll see, I guess, how the team does.
They always use that as a pun, I realized, for the Reds, because they would call it the Reds Hot Stove League.
Aha. Aha. So now.
In fact, I didn't realize until basically just now that the Hot Stove League was a thing that applied to all of baseball. I thought it was just a Reds thing because they were like, we're funny. The Reds Hot Stove League. Do you get it? Like,
I guess it would be the Giant Hot Stove League for us.
That's pretty good too.
Like a real big one, like a big stove. I don't know. Either way, I think for our next episode, we're probably going to have to, really crank up the heat in this stove and start to look a little bit more closely at spring training and prepping for that. We should probably also talk about MLB at Bat a little bit more. That service, get that set up and split between us, split her down the middle. Yeah, and obviously, if you've got any topics that you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, I know we've had a few
or any kind
requests,
of feedback.
Or any feedback, honestly. You can send that over to topics@baseline.show. We'd, of course, love to hear your topic suggestions and any other feedback that you've got for us.
Yep, and you can also head over to Goodstuff.fm and check out some of the other great shows. Shows such as Show Me Your Mic, which Kyle is also on, in which he shows you his mic.
I
think that's
on
the premise of the show, right? I haven't tuned in.
It's 6 seconds long, and all I
it's
do
a vine.
is...
It's a vine, is it?
We're back, and it's just me showing you the mic, the one I have, the one I'm talking into right now. I actually did get a brand new cover for it. The start of my podcasting career, I had the same windscreen on my Shure SM7B, and I just last week changed it out for a brand new one. So,
how often are you supposed to replace those things?
Probably more often than a toothbrush.
More often than you have.
Yeah. So here I am. That's why I get the flu every year.
Right. But that thing goes in the biohazardous waste when you're done with it.
It probably should have. But I'm on a nice clean one. I don't know. I had like one of those superstitious feelings. Like I had a baseball feeling about it, and I didn't want to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Now I'm on a freshie. So this show, it's
fresh
bringing all
Mike.
Sorts of
fresh hot Mike.
Hot stove Mike League coming at you.
The hot Mike League.
Very, very soon. And so, yeah, well, stay tuned for our next episode.
Mm-hmm. Keep it right here.
This is Baseline.
Don't touch that dial.
And that's the ball game.
Baseline, 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 baseline.
Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this game without the express written consent of Goodstuff.fm is prohibited.